everyone, and welcome to the Cinematic Schematic, the official podcast of Cinematropolis.com, your home to thoughtful conversations on film. I'm your host, Caleb Masters, and today we are tempting fate, rolling the dice, praying that our heads are not crushed during this podcast recording, because we are reviewing not one, but two horror movies. Two, ladies and gentlemen, two of the biggest horror movies of the I guess I would say late spring, early summer. We are reviewing Until Dawn, the video game adaptation that came out at the end of April, and Final Destination Bloodlines, the latest entry and the long napping Final Destination franchise. It's been since 2011, I think, since we got the last one. That's a long time. We're gonna unpack that. So we're gonna start things off with a spoiler light review of Until Dawn. I'll elaborate more on that here in a moment. Before we jump into a spoiler-free review of Final Destination Bloodlines, and then we will conclude with a full, in-depth spoiler discussion of the latter film, Final Destination Bloodlines. Joining me today, as always, for both of these reviews, he is, one of the biggest horror aficionados I know out there. He is an award-winning Oklahoma filmmaker. He is my co-host, and he is next in line to die if, unfortunately, something tragic were to happen on this podcast to me. Laron Chapman, welcome.
Boy, that's news to me. But heard.
The design, man, I can't control the design.
Exactly.
You've been on the podcast second most, so if I'm out, then that means
sense.
you.
Co-host,
Co-host, and then I guess Bo Kemper's next in line,
And then our rotating guest host.
Yeah, all down the line. Well, lucky for us, I don't know, one of these people's probably got something to sweat, but the other one's got a little bit of time. Also very excited to be rejoined by another one of the biggest horror aficionados I know. He is a contributor here at the Cinematropolis and Flick Attack, Christopher Shultz. Chris, welcome back.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for having me.
How does it feel to know that you're somewhere in the top 10 in line for deaths? If death were to start with me, followed by Laron, followed by the rest of the guest hosts,
I just hope it's a good one, like a memorable one.
Yeah.
Yeah. If we're talking Final Destination level,
Mm-hmm.
Rube Goldberg type freak accident death. Then,
Yeah.
I hope it's one for
quick
the ages.
and awesome.
Yeah.
Quick and awesome and surprising. It's like I don't want to get just strangled in the bathtub. I want to get bulldozed by a bunch of logs on the highway. Right? Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Chris, always a pleasure to have you back, and I'm super excited to chat this film with you. Last but certainly not least, we are rejoined by, she's a deadCenter features programmer, Chaves Rojas. Cam, welcome back.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm really excited. I also do love horror. I may not spread that information around, but yeah, I love it.
A fan of all the films, but horror in particular. Thank you for joining us. And I'm so sorry. I probably should have warned you if by joining this podcast you were potentially signing a death warrant. The good news is you're pretty far down the line, so you've got some time to prepare.
Okay, thank you. I'll be the one having premonitions, so watch out.
Much like a character in this film, my goal is to hold death back as long as possible for all of the guests of the Cinematic Schematic. Well, listeners, if you have enjoyed any of our previous shows, or you enjoyed the conversation today, you can let us know by heading to your preferred podcast app and leaving us a rating and a review. Let us know if you like this deadly conversation, and maybe we'll be discovered by more listeners just like you before the untimely death. Now, before we get into either of those reviews, I did want to make a quick announcement because we are here in the second half of May. Don't know how we got here so quickly, which means the deadCenter Film Festival is right around the corner. So the 25th annual deadCenter Film Festival, which for those of you who do not live in Oklahoma, is Oklahoma's biggest film festival, is celebrating its 25th year, and it's actually going to be celebrating with an additional day, along with tons of other extra special programming. Festivities for the event starts on Wednesday, June 11th, and will run through Sunday, June 15th. Passes are now on sale at deadcenterfilm.org. And I want to learn a little bit more about this from the two people sitting across from me at the table. Both of you are deadCenter programmers. So that is, of course, Cam, Laron. So I'll throw it to you first, Laron, as co-host, and then to you, Cam. What are a few of the things listeners can look forward to at this year's festival?
Both of us are feeling the weight of the 25th anniversary, because it is, obviously that's a long running, festival, especially a locally made one. I every year I have a goal, one, to elevate, the quality and showcase the quality of Oklahoma filmmakers here in the state. That's always the first and foremost, is to just give people who are visiting our state for the first time to see that we actually have a lot of raw talent here, that kind of uncharted talent in many ways, that I hope we can put a spotlight on. So we had a record amount of Oklahoma admissions this year. So I think we had 24,
Yeah, we
24,
have
which
two
is
dozen for our 25th anniversary. So I think 1,700 submissions overall, and only 200 got in.
yes.
Pretty
So
big deal.
a lot of whittling down in that
Yes.
regard.
Tough job. I don't know how you guys do that. That's a lot of movies.
It's a lot of hours logged, personal hours logged at home. But you know what? When you find those little gems, the ones that we found in this lineup, it makes it all worth it. And we're just always so eager to show it to people and say, how good did we do? Let's see our scorecard. So we had a record number of Oklahoma submissions, but also something that I always want to elevate or showcase is, because I'm a freak at heart, when it comes to like the kind of material I want to see.
You don't say.
When I right, for viewers who've been following us, but I feel like when I go to South by, or when I go to Sundance, or I go to any of these film festivals, the takeaway is always like, when you get to see that one film, there's always the highlights, the things you expect to see when you're there. Like, okay, I'm going to go see that, obviously. But then there's those gems that you're not looking for that kind of just floor you, And so that is always my biggest goal, is scouring the best of the best and trying to curate blocks that have like those you've never seen anything like this before, or you'll be talking about this after it's over, whether you love it or not. And that I would describe as my midnight block. So if you find yourself, at the festival this year and you want to see some trippy, twisted, messed up stuff, then the midnight shorts are definitely the ticket. So.
Oh yeah, must see on my agenda. I've got that one saved in my calendar. Laron, you got me sold. Cam, what else can you add? What else can people see or look forward to seeing at this year's deadCenter Film Festival?
Well, okay, so this is my first year as a features programmer, so it was something completely different. I was shorts programmer since I started 4 years ago, so it's definitely a different kind of beast to tackle, but it's so much more fun because we try really hard to build relationships with filmmakers, and especially people that showed shorts and stuff like that. We definitely did more of an outreach this year, which was really cool to see, to find those filmmakers that were interested in joining us. So what I was particularly proud of is finding a Counting Crows documentary that's going to hit HBO not shortly after we have it. So it's kind of a sneak peek. It's called Counting Crows, Have You Seen Me Lately? And it's actually one of our Oklahoma icons, Amy, I'm trying to remember.
Scott, I believe.
Amy Scott, yeah. So she's really cool. She did a Sheryl Crow documentary. She did one about Hal Ashby.
Oh, I remember that a couple years ago,
right?
Yeah,
a couple years ago. So she's going to be here. And it's always cool when we find those connections, because she was originally she's showing at Tribeca and then here. So that always feels like a pat in the back as a programmer when you're able to find those connections, and then we're able to reach out and you find that filmmaker that even though they're no longer here, they're so excited to be here. They want to be here. She asked HBO, like, can I have permission to show this before it even drops? So I thought that was pretty cool. So look out for that. We have so many amazing Oklahoma features that are like world premieres.
Mm-hmm.
And I always appreciate that Okie filmmakers want to wait to premiere at deadCenter, because they have opportunities. Like, we're not the only film festival in Oklahoma, but they want to be at deadCenter, and they want to celebrate those 25 years with us. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, it's going to be a big celebration. Very excited to attend and participate. A lot of films to see. I really like that Hal Ashby documentary from a couple years back. So I'll have to make sure is it Counting Crows?
Yeah, Counting Crows, Have You Seen Me Lately?
Yeah.
I also have one more thing. I always plan the Cookies at Cookies party at Cookies Karaoke Bar.
It's where you and I met. Not at a deadCenter event. We just happened to run each other cookies.
No, exactly.
Fun
So
story.
I always try to bring that in, especially one film we have this year called Close Enough to Burn by Ben Tefera. It has a Sean Gunn in it, and they have a scene with Sean Gunn at Cookies. So I thought it was a cool way to tie everything together, because Cookies has been used in other films like Mickey Reese films and stuff like that as like a setting. So it's like bringing more people to areas in Oklahoma that are cool.
Yeah, it also stars Laron Marzette, who shares my namesake, which is is both a blessing and a curse because we love each other, and it's so funny that we've acted alongside each other on screen. The Laron versus
Laron's
Laron.
met.
Yeah, the Larons met, then they've acted on screen together on a film.
Wow.
So, I think I was playing a drug dealer, which is like, I mean, obviously typecasting, but like, but yeah,
You give me those vibes, LaRon.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's such a drug dealer. What's going on?
Right. So, but it is cool to know that there is another.
You got my fix?
Right.
You got my fix of DVDs that I want to
Exactly.
borrow from you? Yeah.
Exactly. And how many Larons could there possibly be in the state?
Seriously.
And then what is the odds that they would both be in the same industry
They would
and know each other and work with each other?
And then act across from each other.
Exactly.
You know.
Like just,
Yeah.
fate sometimes just,
Yeah.
speaking of fate.
So
That's-
that'll be cool. And like that Close Enough to Burn, that's their like second feature film. So they're kind of a new face compared to like a lot of veterans that we have this year.
Exciting stuff. So, listeners, you can check that out over at deadcenterfilm.org. We are actually going to be doing a little bit of Dead Center programming here on the podcast, as we always do. Have at least at minimum, we're going to be having a little preview episode. We get more in the weeds on some of the programming. If you like the conversation we just had, a little more coming on that very soon. I know, per the usual, Chris has been writing for the Cinematropolis for many years now, covering Dead Center. Him, Dambo Kemper, Joe Lightwall will be contributing again this year via written, essays on a variety of either documentaries, shorts, or features at the festival. And then we'll have, some filmmaker interviews spread throughout as well. So lots to come yet. Let's move on to our first review, which is Until Dawn.
I'm looking for my sister. Does she look familiar to you?
She's gone missing.
I didn't say that. Do a lot of people go missing around here?
Up the road. That's why people get into trouble.
Those were the first people here in years.
Looks like it too.
Weird.
That's my sister's signature. Oh, shit.
Guys, check it out.
What happened to these people?
Where's my car?
Where's Megan?
According to IMDb, Until Dawn is described as a group of friends trapped in a time loop where a mysterious foes chase them and kill them in gruesome ways, must survive until dawn to escape it. It's definitely not like Cabin in the Woods whatsoever. If you couldn't just change it out. I want to give a spoiler light disclaimer here because, usually we do spoiler free and we do in-depth spoiler discussion. But here's the thing. I selfishly wanted to cover this movie, but I'll be the first to tell you that there's not exactly a ton of meat on the bones here for a full episode. So we're going to kind of like bend the rules a little bit. There will be spoilers in that. We can talk about the setup. We can talk about some of the gimmicks. Basically sort of leave everything, spoil everything other than maybe the last act. It's like who lives, who dies, how does it end, who are the real villains, all that fun stuff. So if you don't want to be spoiled at all, maybe just skip ahead. But if you don't care about those details, we're just going to jump right into it. So a few fun facts about the film. Until Dawn is based on the 2015 video game of the same name that was released on the PlayStation 4. Recently, just got re-released on the PS5. I have played it both times because it's a fun game. The film stars Ella Rubin as Clover. I didn't know that was a name. Sorry, I'm maybe a jerk on this one. I'm going to butcher this guy's actual name. Michael Cimino as Max and Peter Stormare as Dr. Hill. There's a couple other actors that appear in here as well. Peter Stormare is the only character or actor that carries over from both the game and this film, and maybe the same character too. We'll get into that. The original game is notable because it had some pretty big stars, even for the time. Hayden Panettiere was sort of like the biggest one at the time. But the fun fact is, revisiting it, you're like, oh, it also features Oscar award-winning Rami Malek not too long before he won the Oscar, so that's kind of fun. This film, Until Dawn, was budgeted at $15 million and has already grossed $49.6 million worldwide to date. So pretty big box office success in terms of money spent versus money earned. The film has decidedly more mixed reviews, with a 53% on Rotten Tomatoes, according to the critics, though I think it has a pretty high audience score. So I thought maybe first, and Cam, I'll throw this to you first just because you had mentioned to me that you'd played the game, so maybe let's kick this conversation off by just talking about what exactly is our relationship with the video game. So Cam, take it away.
Yeah, so definitely the video game was when I was in college. That was the one that you would pop on with friends. And then, definitely watching video game walkthroughs, the big mechanics of the game was to save everybody. And obviously, if you didn't hit the quick time controls really quick, you would kill people and you were set in that storyline. So what was fun is playing it with people and seeing like who could keep whoever alive. And then you would go back to those video game walkthroughs and it's like, okay, fuck, how do I save Jessica? How do I save so-and-so,
Where did I go wrong?
So I always found that really fun. And at OU at the time, they had a video game theory class. So I got to write like a short little paper about it and got to learn more about what makes the game so enticing for people, about why the mechanics are literally putting you in a horror film, giving you that palm sweat. Why is it that pressing buttons at a certain moment is so hard when you're like emotionally invested in a story? So I personally really love the game. I would replay it anytime I could, obsessing over the lore, which we can get more into that. But yeah.
Oh, then you definitely have some skin in the game, because there is some very cleverly hidden but also vital lore that they sprinkle into this movie, which was kind of surprising to me, honestly. I have a similar experience with the college, but I was a couple years out of college, but I played it with my friends from college in a group setting.
Yeah.
And so listeners, to kind of provide a little more context here, this is like sort of like these games are more like, they're movies that you play. It's very much a choose your own adventure type game. I don't know if you ever read any of those books way back in the day where, hey, do I want to be a jerk to Jessica or do I want to play nice? Okay. And if you play nice, the way you talk to her, the conversations between the two of you are going to change. Yeah. Oh, you made this person mad. Well, now they ran off and got themselves killed. Whoops, didn't mean to do that. But as Cam, you laid out there, like, once people die, like once these decisions are made in the decision tree, you can't undo it. The game immediately locks you into that decision. Yeah. So it adds a lot of stakes to your investment. You feel like, oh my gosh, I got to keep them all alive. And when someone dies, you're actually really invested. Yeah. And I will say, I played it in college, and then my wife had never played it. We played it when it released on the PS5 last year, whenever that was, recently. And man, I still could. There was one guy one character who I lost because I tended to follow video game logic, which is, the game wants me to rush. So if I rush, I'm definitely going to die. No, I found out later after finishing the game, because it'd been long enough. No. In fact, the reason she died, I think it was Jess, I believe, was because I wasn't going fast enough. And I did, but you don't know when you're in it, whether you're supposed to go fast or slow. Especially as a gamer, you're like, the game's trying to trick me, so I'm not going to fall for it. But in reality,
yes,
second guess yourself.
Exactly. I also could not keep Jessica alive either.
She's very hard to keep alive.
She's very hard, which is hence the video game walkthroughs where I'm like, this girl, like, I got to get her, But then again, you're locked into a 20-hour game after, you know what I mean? Yeah. Like 20 hours to finish it, or however long it may take you, So, but that was always the fun and frustration behind being a part of it. So, love the game.
Yeah, I think it holds up pretty well. And also the same studio who has made several other games, The Quarries, the other sort of like feature, like the really big one they've made, and then they also have like the Dark Pictures anthologies. I should have looked up the name of the developer. I'll find it. But yeah, it's a really great developer out there. Christopher Shultz, what is your relationship with the video game?
My relationship is basically zero with the game. I have no familiarity with it, other than the name sounded familiar when I heard about the movie. So yeah, I'm very much a virgin when it comes to these games and most games. I'm not a huge gamer personally, so.
See, that's what I want. I want the diversity of thought. I'm like, what is a horror fan who's never played the games? What are they thinking about it? I'm curious. Laron, had you heard of these before?
No, I am in between both of them in the sense that I am very aware of what this game is, because I did have a lot of friends that were gamers, and if they were going to go see the movie that I wanted to see that night, I had to let them play games for 4 hours before that. So in the words of Lin-Manuel Miranda, I was in the room where it happened, where I was watching them play this game. So I'm familiar with it, at least from, I guess from a peripheral standpoint, without ever having actually played it myself. I was kind of familiar with the premise and the concept of it. So, yeah.
Wow. So a little bit of a mixed group of relationships here with the game. So I'll throw it to you first, Laron.
Uh-huh.
We'll do this in reverse order. What did you think of the film?
So I, hearing you guys describe the game and remembering the fond memories I had of watching other people play the game in front of me, I found that far more entertaining than this movie. I just found the movies, like the concept of it is fun, but it becomes monotonous and repetitive to the point of like somewhere about 45 minutes in, I disassociated for the other half. I could not tell you, even what happens beyond a certain point because I was no longer invested. I kind of got what it was doing. And it wasn't really diversifying, like there are different villains and different monsters or creatures or threats, I should say. But I would say that each one didn't level up in the way that I would have anticipated, like each, like the stakes getting higher. It kind of felt like everything was kind of in this same, that had a sameness to it that where it just kind of autopiloted it for me in ways that where like movies that I don't think are great but fun, like 13 Ghosts, which I kind of referenced towards
movie.
this.
I mean, not great, but
not
fun.
a great movie, but fun. But each Ghost is more interesting than the last one.
Right.
There's something unique or distinctive about it. And here they're all kind of like, okay, the garden variety of different things happening. There's some gore, some, what have you, but I couldn't distinguish between a lot of the characters. It just kind of felt kind of flat as a movie concept, and that's unfortunate because I do think the premise was a lot of fun, but as a movie, I found it kind of tedious, to be honest with you.
All right. Well, Laron, down on the film, Christopher Shultz, what did you think of Until Dawn, the film?
I mean, I felt that it was fun overall. I mean, but not the same kind of fun as you would expect to have in a movie-going experience. Not the same kind of fun that you have with, say, a Final Destination, which we'll get to that, obviously. But it seemed like sort of the idea, or like Cabin in the Woods, for instance, with all the different various monsters. We have a film that's trying to do a lot of that stuff, but just kind of doing it sort of run-of-the-mill fashion. But I wasn't. I did feel kind of bored in the middle part of it as well.
Yeah.
Kind of similar to what Laron is saying about disassociating with it. It's just sort of it kind of became background noise in some ways. So it wasn't. I don't think it was a terrible movie, but definitely not a rush and see it.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, we've got two kind of middling to negative reviews. Cam, what did you think of the movie?
Yeah, I think as a fan of the game, they already had a really solid storyline from the video games that I think they were trying to pull from different films. So we've mentioned Cabin in the Woods many times. So that's something that they could have run with this whole time loop scenario that they had set up. But it's interesting that the game locks you in the moment you kill someone.
Right.
But then the movie wants you to feel like you're repeating.
It's like the opposite.
It's complete opposite. And maybe they thought it gave you a thought into playing a game, but it's a different game. It's not Until Dawn. So that was a little frustrating. But yeah, I felt like bringing back Peter Stormare, they could have done so much more with that.
Yeah.
And they didn't. So it just felt like there were so many Easter eggs that they were like, this is Until Dawn, but it wasn't Until Dawn. So I also did struggle with that too. And then it gets super convoluted at the end when they try to tie it back to everything that you just kind of are like, okay, you're giving me too many plot lines, you're giving me too many things that I just don't really care anymore.
Yeah. Also the way they resolve the main conflict seemed really lazy.
Exactly.
And stupid.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're like, this is how you're going to beat the thing? The thing's that stupid?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess it's like we wrote ourselves into a corner. Yeah, you hit on something there, and it sort of ties into what I find both frustrating and interesting about this movie, because I thought it was perfectly fine. I didn't hate it. I did feel it dragging in the middle quite a bit, to the point, after about 45 minutes, I was like, all right, so when's the gotcha? And there really isn't one. I mean, the gotcha, I guess, is you see kind of coming from like a million miles away. And at that point, you're like, okay, can we just wrap it up now? But then you realize you have like at least 45 more minutes of movie left. And, you know, it's perfectly okay. I mean, I think, you know, we'll get to actual letter grades here, but it's one that, like, if it's on streaming, I would say is a perfectly, you know, fine use of your time to just throw on while you're doing laundry or something like that. But it's not a must see. For me, what's more interesting about the movie, again, is not the actual movie. It's the conversation around adapting video games. And I do think they tried something interesting here. I don't think they were successful in any way. But we ran into this problem with a lot of video games that are very story-driven. So, for example, the Uncharted film starring Tom Holland was also, in my opinion, kind of a dud. And there's the reason for that, from my estimation, is the Uncharted video games are definitely contemporized Indiana Jones, but the video game, right? Mm-hmm. That's what they're going for. Yeah. And so what makes the game so compelling is you're playing through these big Indiana Jones-esque set pieces, but you're playing it. So it feels so like, you know, your palms are sweaty. You're like, I gotta hit these buttons. I gotta do. And can I just believe that I climbed up this cargo net thing to get into the plane so I didn't die? It's so cool. Yeah. Or there's this huge train heists. You're kind of crawling up to the cars. Super fun in the game. But then when you put it in the movie, you're like, wait, this is just a derivative of the game, which is just a derivative of the movie. And the reason the game's able to do it's because it's a different experience when you're playing it than when you're watching it. So what I will give credit to Until Dawn for attempting is I don't know that you could, Cam, create that same sense of, oh my gosh, I made a mistake. My favorite character's dead, because that also only works in the game, because in the game you're used to being able to, I made a mistake. We'll just go back to the last save or we'll restart it. No big deal. Mm-hmm. But in those games you can't. It's very final. And I don't think you could quite replicate that in a movie. So they're trying to do the reverse, and I think you nailed it. It's like, well, they want to, instead of making the film adaptation more like the game storyline, they're trying to replicate what makes video games unique. But the problem is, that's not at all what it feels like to play Until Dawn. Yeah. So at this point, it just feels like a generic kind of hodgepodge of Groundhog Day and Cabin in the Woods and a couple of others you could throw in there. Yeah. And everything. And also, I want to use capital G generic. Like, there's not really a lot. It's not like the production design's great. It's not like the characters are memorable. It's not like the monsters are scary. It just feels kind of like everything feels kind of like a throwaway. That said, I wasn't bored. But I do think the choice for adaptation is worth looking at. As I see what you're trying, and I really appreciate that you did that. But you also didn't nail it.
Right, right.
And you just like slapped on Until Dawn on there. Like you just put Until Dawn so people would go and see it.
I honestly feel like if this, and I've seen this review several times from high-profile critics, even like people in the comment section saying like, if this was not called Until Dawn, people would probably be more forgiving of this movie. They would, because they wouldn't make the association.
There's not a fan base that's going to attack it.
It would be the middling kind of B movie that it is, without it feeling like it's missing its potential to be better than it is. So.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's I'm torn because but here's the thing. This is probably, my hunch is this was probably some shelf project, or
it feels dated
or
too.
Like first draft script from a while ago. That they're like, how can we sell it? Yeah. So I don't know. There's not really a lot to say about the movie, honestly. I don't know. Laron, I mean, as a person who doesn't really do the games, was there anything about like the adaptation choices that stuck out to you?
It made me curious to play the game, because my memory of even watching the game was more riveting than the actual. I think because what it was is I just feel like all the choices they made in the movie felt very uninspired, is the word that kept coming to mind. Is like, okay,
I did like the exploding water though. I didn't see that one coming.
There are some cool death scenes in this. I'll give you that. Like, I mean, like it's not unwatchable in that regard. I guess I just, even from the I was getting very like, it's gonna be Happy Death Day meets 13 Ghosts. You guys mentioned Cabin in the Woods. I think is a better example. But that's kind of the merging I got with it. And I think that both of those movies are better. Both of those movies are better than this. So it's like it is those movies, and it's taking threads from all these other movies that you can kind of, connect, but you just find yourself rather watching those movies, so it's not differentiating itself in a way that's like synthesizing all these ideas in a unique or novel way, so it kind of just feels like a retread of a lot of different movie tropes and ideas and concepts that don't feel fresh,
I definitely wanted to kind of hear someone who hasn't played the games. How do you interpret all this craziness? Cam, what do you think about the film's adaptation choices?
I mean, they definitely try to throw in Easter eggs for fans. I mean, the casting, of course, of the character Peter, like you kind of assume it's the same guy, or maybe not. I don't know how spoilery we want to get, but there was a lot of Easter eggs in there with some of the creatures that get to show up, with some of like the setting, the stories. Yeah.
Less worried about spoiling the movie than I am actually the game.
Yeah.
Sorry, continue.
No, I know. I'm not. Just like the creatures, there were some things here and there. But yeah, again, the characters were not memorable. There weren't the characters in the game that I really got to know. But obviously, you have 20 plus hours to get to hang out with them. So, of course, and you're also making decisions as the character to, like you said, be nice to someone, be kind of rude to someone, and that will affect how the game turns out, how your relationships turn out. So I think adaptation wise, it's difficult because there will always be a fan base that will never be happy or satisfied. Think about The Last of Us, you think about, like you said, like Uncharted. There's always going to be someone upset, but it's whether they do it kind of mediocre or really bad or really good, that people, I think, pay attention to. This one was just like, okay. It just didn't feel like they could have done so much more with it, But I didn't hate it. I just thought it could have just done more,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Chris, anything you want to add about the film's adaptation choices as a non-game player?
I mean, again, just having no familiarity with the game, it's sort of hard to compare. But I don't think my assessment of the movie changes because I have no familiarity with it. I think it's still a kind of middle of the road.
Middle of the road?
Yeah.
So if we were going to put this in the pantheon of video game adaptations, where would we put it? Because it's not let's be honest, the bar is pretty, it's getting better, but there's some pretty terrible video game adaptations out there that are not even, they're both bad adaptations and bad movies.
I mean,
on a scale of Super Mario Brothers movie to, I don't know, what's one of the best ones?
even I didn't hate the Sonic movies. I think they're pretty.
No, those are good. Those are fun.
I feel like the Sonic movies are better, and
they understand the assignment.
Lore, but they make them more interesting than I think you would expect them to be. Had to watch those with my nephew and thought I was gonna hate my time, and I was like, these are actually kind of entertaining. Did not feel the same way about Mario Brothers, but I feel like this is.
Minecraft?
Minecraft too is another one. It just it's not for me. I'm not the demographic. So the people that love it and are going to the movies multiple times that make their kids happy, I'm happy they're happy. We all need our thing, but I feel like this, as in like the larger pantheon of game adaptations, the ones that I can recall, like I've seen every Resident Evil movie. I've seen you mentioned The Last of Us, I feel like is probably high on the list of adaptations just from the people I know who've played it. And also, just in terms of just actual cinematic storytelling and adapting something like this, where I could see how this could be emotional in a game as well, but I feel like this is top of the lower tier of them. I think probably the one that comes to mind that I genuinely like is Silent Hill, the first one, the first Silent Hill.
It's great.
Film.
It gets the vibes.
The vibe.
See, that's the thing. The game, it nails one of the most important component of the games, which is the atmosphere.
Yeah.
And the music is the score is so good.
Yeah. So I'm just gonna, I'm gonna pass you, Cam, in a second, but just for context, listeners, here's some other video game film adaptations. I'm not even gonna comment on the quality of any of this because I think some of them are actually pretty solid, some of them are pretty terrible. Let's see. Warcraft 2016. last year, Borderlands did a whole bonus episode on that one. Oh boy, that one's bad. Uncharted 2022. Here's one I forget about, but I actually quite like. A Mortal Kombat from 2021, though it does not actually make it to Mortal Kombat. Hopefully they do it in the sequel coming out later this year. Assassin's Creed 2016. All of the Resident Evil movies. I am a fan of those. Guilty pleasure. Almost all of them are pretty awful. Gran Turismo.
But fun.
That's
different.
Yeah, exactly. Well, they kind of know what they're doing. I mean, there's Gran Turismo 2023, Need for Speed 2014. How can we forget the Aaron Paul special?
Oh, my God.
Ratchet and Clank 2016. This one's good. Prince of Persia 2010. Yeah. Another one people probably
Persian Jake Gyllenhaal.
Yeah.
My favorite.
Back when that was still, air quotes, okay to do. Yeah, featuring your favorite. Yeah, your
favorite actor.
Favorite actor.
In brown face.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't want to know what the budget on that movie was. It was
Probably ridiculous.
It was like a Pirates because they were trying to recapture the magic of Pirates of the Caribbean with that one. Yes. Another one people forget about, Max Payne 2008, starring our boy. I think that one's Marky Mark. We got Street Fighter.
There's one with Timothy Oliphant, right? Like, and he's like got the gun. Oh, that's Hitman. There's that.
Hitman is a video game adaptation. Yeah, and I think there's two of those movies.
It's like Rupert Friend.
In one of them. Yeah. Yep. Five Nights at Freddy's. Very recent. I know I'm just rambling off, but I'm just putting out there to give you the full spectrum of there have been a lot of these lately. There's 3 Final Fantasy movies. Now, those are interesting because they're actually made by the developer that makes the games. And I would say none of them are very good, actually, but 2 of them are good if you're a fan. Anyway, a lot of adaptations. Cam, of all the movies I just listed and that Laron has mentioned, where does this fall in the pantheon?
I think it's just pretty much in the middle, to be honest with you. I will say some of the kills and some of the splatter was not so bad, I was like, at least when they were holding the camera, the whole montage of the kills, I thought that was interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it's not terrible, but again, like you were saying, put it on to watch laundry, couple intriguing moments, you can block off the rest if you want. But I think it's in the middle, maybe lower middle. But,
lower middle?
Yeah.
The top of the bottom.
Top of the bottom, which is interesting.
How could I forget Uwe Boll's Far Cry 2008? If we're going to go to the bottom.
Oh, man.
Also, do Pokemon movies count? I guess technically they count.
Then if that's the case, then Detective Pikachu is number 1.
Yeah.
I know. Actually, you're right. No, you're right. Then it should count because that movie, I actually like. That movie's pretty good.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
I mean, for what it is, it's pretty good.
Yeah.
Christopher Shultz, how would you, if you were going to put this in the pantheon of the video game adaptations?
Yeah, I'd say top to bottom as well. It's not the worst movie you're ever going to see, but it's definitely not the best movie you're ever going to see either.
Okay. I would agree. Top of the bottom. It's not offensively I don't regret my time, but I also wouldn't recommend it. Next time we have a happy hour, test my knowledge. I can rank my secret, my hidden skill is that I can embarrassingly name the Resident Evil titles in order.
Yes.
This is the most worthless talent I own, but it's impressive because they're all very bad generic titles. Letter grades. I'll throw it to you, Cam. What letter grade would you give Until Dawn?
I gave it a C, to be honest. Again, pretty in the middle. I don't hate it. I love the game. Again, if this was a different film that wasn't Until Dawn, I think I would have given it something higher. But because it is Until Dawn, I'm like, okay, guys, we had potential to jump off of the original story, and we chose something really convoluted that just didn't pay off, in my opinion.
You didn't bring Rami Malek, the Oscar winner, back to the franchise? Get out of town.
I was like, at least Hayden Panettiere.
Yeah.
Someone. Try to get
what
someone
is she
in
doing
there.
These days? She could do it.
Yeah.
And, gosh. Oh, man. Laron Chapman, what's your letter grade for this one?
I want to be nice, but I really did find it tedious. So I feel like a D+.
D+.
D+ is it's 69%. That feels fair in my mind in terms of how much I enjoyed it, because that's about how long I was invested in it.
Mm-hmm.
So Yeah, I don't think it's terrible. Like I said, I think there's movies that are unwatchable. I could put this on in the background, like you said, like at a Halloween party and not pay attention to it, and it would create a nice ambiance. But to sit there and be invested in it again, I don't think I could do that. So.
Yeah. No, I feel your pain there. Christopher Shultz, what letter grade would you give the film?
I give it a C.
C?
Yeah.
Down the middle?
Solid C.
Yeah.
C minus.
Right. C minus.
I'm going C minus on mine. There was enough there. Like I said, that there's some of the deaths, the water explosion. I was expecting one of them to like morph into a werewolf or something, and
like a callback to the quarry or something.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And nope, they just
a game
exploded.
I have played that I do like.
Okay, sorry if that's a spoiler for some people, but
the quarry is the spiritual successor of Until Dawn, and it's like, oh yeah. So if you like the quarry, it's literally the same.
Then I need to play.
I mean, different story.
I need to play the game, not just watch it.
Yeah.
You know, like
Supermassive Games.
Yes, thank you. Supermassive Games. Thank you for checking on that. Great studio. So on that note of Supermassive Games, I'll throw my alternate media recommendation being just go play the games. Again, they are Until Dawn, of course, The Quarry. There's an entire series called the Dark Picture Anthology series where basically it's shorter versions of that same game. And this allows them to release games more frequently. And also, I think they mix up the variety of horror. So like, I would say both The Quarry and Until Dawn are kind of looking into the like, a bunch of teens at a summer camp trope. I mean, I know they're in a cabin in the woods, but it's cabin in the woods, summer camp,
vacation.
Yeah,
yes.
like that very
winter break kind of vibes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and like the Dark Anthology allows them to get a little bit more creative. Like they have one where basically you're playing as a group of people who are trapped in a house that is modeled after H.H. Holmes traps. It's not H.H. Holmes. It's like a super fan of H.H. Holmes traps people in the house, and it's all very maze-like. You've got one where they're exploring some stuff around like the Salem, an analog to the Salem witch trials, like, there's witchcraft and things of that nature. And there's another one that's a lot more like The Descent, for example. So you get more flavors of horror, and none of them are quite as long or as big of a commitment. Me and my wife have played through all of them and have had quite a great time with it.
And it's like a who's who of who's acting in them.
Oh, yeah.
You know, you're like, this is who's in it, you know.
Yeah.
They usually, in the Dark Picture Anthology, there's always at least one big name.
Yeah.
Like I think Will Poulter's in one of them.
Jessie from I think can't remember her name. Jessie. She's in Men.
Buckley,
yeah. Jessica Buckley.
Yeah.
Yeah. She's in I think the serial killer one. But yeah, it's a great time. Lots, and they've got another. Their next one's is supposed to be like the Thing, but in space is what they're kind of marketing. Something that's supposed to come out later this year. Excited about that one. Laron, Chapman, what would you recommend to people instead of Until Dawn?
I feel like I've listed all of them, but I'll say them again for reference. 13 Ghosts, Happy Death Day 1 and 2, Cabin in the Woods. Those seem like good reference points of movies that this is kind of teasing, but not quite fully fully realized yet.
Christopher Shultz, what would you recommend instead?
There's this movie from 2013 called Haunter that not a lot of people have seen, but it's directed by Vincenzo Natali, who did Cube.
I do love Vincenzo Natali.
Yeah, he's done a lot of genre type stuff.
Yeah.
This one is a teen horror time loop narrative. So if you're looking for teen-based horror with a time loop spin and a haunted house spin as well, check out Haunter.
Dude,
that sounds awesome.
This sounds awesome. I love this director. I love time loop movies. I didn't know that this was a thing, so I am super going to add this to my watch list. Cam, what would you recommend instead of Until Dawn?
Well, I just threw in some games because I'm like, actually play Until Dawn if you haven't played it. The Quarry, Detroit Become Human.
Oh yeah, that's another great one.
That's another great one. And then I just threw in, Cabin in the Woods, obviously, or any kind of film that tries to kind of talk about horror in as a genre in general. So like any of those 90s films, like you want a slasher film, see Scream, like that's kind of making fun of the genre at the same time. Because I think that's what they were trying to do with the whole, like, trying to make that elevated horror of like we're commenting on the genre. But they didn't quite achieve it, so maybe watch the ones that are actually achieving that.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, one last one. You mentioning Detroit Become Human it reminded me of the other one from that same developer. Again, different developer than Supermassive Games, but the same kind of like choose your own adventure story. It was Heavy Rain.
Oh, yeah.
And that one's like a pulpy detective story about a kidnapping. And it's a really great game. All of those are great games. Great recommends. All right, listeners. Well, that's our review of Until Dawn. This is about probably as much juice as I could squeeze out of this movie. Because to be real, there's really not a lot there. There's some fan Easter egg stuff Cam and I could geek out about, but I say geek out, but they actually kind of annoy me more than they are adding.
They're like tedious because they didn't really expand upon them. They're just kind of there, you know?
Well, there's a post-credit or mid-post-credit scene. I roll my eyes because they're like, but actually this does take place in the same university of the games. And I was like, no, don't do that.
It's a little too late. Sorry.
Yeah, it was rough. That said, let's jump into our spoiler-free review of our next film, Final Destination: Bloodlines.
Family, you don't get to pick the one you get. Just gotta love the one you got.
I always knew this day would come.
I got it.
I don't think you got it. I held him off for years.
Charlie, get up here.
He's a relentless son of a bitch. Won't stop till he finishes the job. Death is coming for our family.
So according to IMDb, Final Destination: Bloodlines is described as plagued by a recurring violent nightmare. A college student returns home to find one person who can break the cycle and save her family from the horrific fate that inevitably awaits them. This is the 6th entry in the Final Destination franchise and the first one released since 2011. Hey guys, fun fact. My wife and I watched all these over the course of about 2 months. And when I saw it was 2011, I was like, wait, it's been longer since we got the 5th one than it was between the original release in 2005 and 2011.
Yeah. What's that mean?
What does that say about us? This film was directed by Zach Lipovsky and Adam Stein. I hope I got those names right. They are most famous for the indie film Freaks and 2019's live-action Kim Possible movie for the Disney Channel.
Wow, I forgot that.
Me too, man.
Probably for the best.
Pre-COVID. I mean, after watching this, I'm at least kind of curious. I mean, maybe it's not the worst version of the thing that could be made. This film, Final Destination: Bloodlines, was written by Guy Busick and Laurie Evans Taylor. And I wanted to call out, not a writer, but did get a story credit, which was interesting, was John Watts, as in the director of the most recent Spider-Man trilogies with Tom Holland. What was the movie? He also just did another movie super recently. Totally drawing a blank. But it was pretty forgettable. That's the moral of the story. This film was made on a budget. Oh, Wolves. That was the one he directed. Yes.
The plural or the single? Because there's two.
No, the plural.
Okay.
That had George.
There's a movie
Clooney.
that came out, an indie movie, kind of horror adjacent, called Wolf that you're not referring to.
No.
Okay.
John Watts directed the George Clooney, Brad Pitt reunion.
Okay.
Now, this film was made on a budget of $50 million and opened at number 1 on its opening weekend, and it has grossed $56.6 million domestically and $110.7 million worldwide. So we like to call these a smash hit for a horror franchise to gross $50 million in one opening weekend. Pretty impressive. The film is also rated very highly. I believe it has like a 91, 92% Rotten Tomatoes, which again for horror movies are pretty unheard of. Also an A- cinema score, also unheard of. So people like it. Now this film marks Tony Todd's final appearance. Now a couple of interesting tidbits that have come out during the press circuit for this film is that Tony Todd, when he signed on to the film, he actually knew that he was dying of stomach cancer and notified the producers, and not necessarily a correlation, but the directors decided on the fly to let Tony Todd improvise some of the lines from his final scene so he could sort of speak directly to the audience. And we'll talk more about that in a moment. But needless to say, you could tell he definitely knew his time was very soon. So real quick, what is your relationship to the Final Destination franchise? It's again, the first film came out in 2000. I want to say all of us are marked as millennials who grew up in that era, are marks for being fans of this franchise. I'll start with you, Christopher Shultz.
So I saw the first one when it came out, and then I didn't see any of the sequels until just in the last few years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So original, I go way back with that one. But yeah, then the sequels, somehow I just never saw them as the years went by. But that being said, I've really kind of gobbled them up. They're a lot of fun.
Yeah, tons of fun. Cam Rojas, what is your relationship with this franchise?
Yeah, kind of same. I got introduced with the third one with Mary Elizabeth Winstead, and that's probably one of my favorite ones.
So went to a roller coaster,
with the roller coaster. And
Oklahoma's Ryan Merriman.
Oh, yes.
Right.
deadCenter icon.
There you go. Throw that in there. Yeah. So I was always very fascinated with horror, but I was kind of a scaredy cat to begin with. So that was an introduction into some kind of horror with gore. And then I eventually watched all of them and got super deep into the lore, especially the fifth one that kind of tied everything back together. Spoiler, kind of. I was like obsessed after that. So I was like, this is a really cool franchise.
Spoiler for the 2011 film, the film that is now 14 years old.
Yes.
It does, in fact, bring things full circle. Wink. Laron Chapman, what is your relationship with this franchise?
So I saw every single one of these movies in theaters except for the original. And I think it was probably when the original came out in 2000. What was it? 2000?
2000.
Okay, so yeah, that would have been 25 years ago. So I would have probably been too young to be able to go.
And rewatching it, it's definitely made in 2000.
It has been some time. It has been some time. But I have really enjoyed this very silly, horror franchise for the wild kind of carnival ride antics of it all. These aren't sophisticated movies by any means, but they're fun. They're just goofy fun. You get to watch dumb people make dumb decisions and die horribly elaborate and satisfying deaths. And for, if you go in with that kind of mentality, then, these can actually be quite fun, kind of be horror movies. And so the popularity of this has been interesting to see over the years, like that this franchise is on its sixth or seventh entry. So that's saying pretty strong. And then the success of this particular
runaway
entry,
success. It's actually bigger than any of the predecessors,
which is insane. I don't know. We mentioned it too. We were looking at the scores for this movie ahead of time, pre-screening. Is this the only one in the franchise that's actually going to have a above Rotten score outside of the fifth one, which I guess barely made it with the 63%. And, so for this to be so high, we're like, does this mean that bloggers and filmmakers from our generation have finally made it into media enough that they're being nicer on these movies than before?
Oh, yeah.
Or because the last one, even the first one, I think is 40%.
Yeah. So Laron, I'm going to read off the note because he screen capped all the ratings for me. I'm just going to read it for context. So listeners, the first Final Destination comes out in 2000, 40% on Rotten Tomatoes. The second film comes out 2003, 52% on Rotten Tomatoes. Interestingly, higher than the first one. The third one, which frankly, up until recently, in my opinion, probably the best one to my summation, 44%. The Final Destination, the fourth one, released in 2009, 28%. And this one's weird. Final Destination 5, so the most recent one before Bloodlines, has 63%. So, Laron, my hypothesis you were talking about, I was like, I can't decide if it's because the movies have actually gotten better or if it's just the millennials who were raised on these always knew what was fun about them and are now the ones driving the critical conversation.
I also think that film critics in general are becoming a little less cynical towards horror films. Horror movies were so maligned, from inception. They were low grade, poor quality, what have you. And now they're kind of beloved in a certain sense. And now that we have that term elevated horror, A24. It's kind of like their brand now. It's weird, kind of psychedelic or whatever, kind of, adding these different layers to it that would kind of retrospectively look at the horror genre and all of its kind of different, ilks, and kind of look at them differently with a softer lens, I think, now than we did before.
Well, even the context of where we're at with IP-driven films in general. I mean, we've had, since 2011, you got to think, gosh, the MCU technically existed then, but it's blown up to become a mega franchise. Horror has gone through at least 2 new chapters since 2011, at least 2. And frankly, when it comes to like IP-driven horror, there are obviously some notable exceptions like Scream. But like we've gotten a lot of schlop, honestly, when you think about like studio-driven IP films. So for this to come out to such a high score, with such a high score and such critical acclaim, fans are embracing it as well, is really, it tells me a lot more about, if we're gonna live in this world of, IP-ification, constant franchises all the time. There are right ways to do it, and there are lazy ways to do it. And again, Scream being another great example of the people who made the sequels clearly loved the material and respected the material a lot. Yeah. And so we were able to tap into that and apply it to a thing they loved and put their own little spin on it without betraying or straying too far from like what made that franchise what it was. And this one seems to me that it's leaning in on everything that fans have liked about the franchise without feeling too up its own ass, and so it's interesting. I watched all of these on the Sci-Fi Channel when I was a kid. I think I watched 1, 2, and 3.
So the edited versions?
The edited versions,
no.
I mean, I wasn't allowed to watch.
So you got all the bad dialogue and less gore.
Yeah, and all of the substituted cuss words. Yeah. So I shouldn't say the first 3 were all on Sci-Fi Channel. The 4th one I saw when it hit DVD, and I don't remember when I saw the 5th one. I have seen it at some point. It was not in theaters, and it was not upon immediate release. I watched it sometime in the intervening years, and then, of course, over the last couple months, rewatched all of them. So it's a franchise that really sticks with me. I feel like I also think that the premise of this franchise, if used smartly, can really be applied in a lot of clever ways.
Yeah.
So that's going, novel concept, you can really take it pretty far in terms of what they do. So that takes us to Final Destination Bloodlines. I'll start with you, Cam Rojas. What did you think about Final Destination Bloodline?
Honestly, as a millennial that grew up with this franchise, I was so surprised that first 20 minutes of being in one kind of story, I was engaged the whole time. Like the editing was sharp, like you were sharp. It was
very sharp.
Lots of sharp.
But I was very engaged with that character, with Iris, and just like her predicament in that tower. And I already had a fear of heights, so I was already palm sweaty. Like, what's gonna happen? What's this whole demise gonna be? So I just thought the whole time it felt like a big scale horror film from those days that we're bringing back that I hadn't seen in a minute, and that whole setting of, I think it was Pacific Northwest kind of vibe. I think that's what it was. I thought it was shot really well. The cinematography was really cool. And the idea of having a family instead of just like high school kids or random strangers, this idea of a family kept me more engaged too, because I thought the cousins were really fun.
Yeah.
And I thought the way they set them up, like looking for that turtle, was very cute. So I just thought there were things here. Paco, where's Paco? So there was just a lot that I was like, oh, I'm actually really into this. It's not like Until Dawn where I was like, I'm just waiting to get to like the big thing that's going to hit. I just wanted to get to know these people. And then everything starts to kind of fall, spiral out of control. So it surprised me a lot.
Yeah, spiral out of control.
I know.
These are all natural puns, we swear.
No, honestly, if you watch the movie, you'll know what we're talking about. But yeah, no, I was just very surprised by the acting and just the stories and everything. I thought it was like pretty well done.
Yeah, very cool. Cam's a big fan. Laron, Chapman, what did you think of Final Destination Bloodlines?
My expectations were way too high, and they were met, surprisingly.
Ooh.
I went into this with like, oh man, they're saying this one's gonna be great. It's gonna be great. And I was like, but now I'm expecting it to be great.
And how good can it be, really?
Right, because like I've seen all these movies, they're all like to a certain degree, on a scale of good to okay, like, but they're fun. Like, I can put them on, and yeah, they're enjoyable. Like in the same way that some of the Saw movies are. Some of them. Like so.
All of them. So, yeah.
Like there's a thing about it where like you know why you're here, and you're gonna see the things, do the things. You can see the bones crunch and do the things. Like, and if you're there, it delivers on that. But I was surprised. As Cam kind of alluded to, again, that with being able to invest in a character or characters in this sense, because I don't think really outside of the original, did we do that? You know what I mean? Like we followed the Devon Sawa character, and that was a character that he was a hot actor at the time, so that made sense. But I think ever since then, I couldn't name a character. And I guess Mary Elizabeth Winstead, but
Wendy, I guess.
In the second movie has a little bit, but it's not done as well as
because Ollie Larder, transitions from there. But I guess what I'm saying is you don't have a cast of characters like Scream or like some of these where you're just like, okay, I want to see my group together and the shit they get into. It's always a random assortment of people that you kind of they get underdeveloped and you don't care. You're just there to see them die. And surprisingly, rooting this into a kind of familial territory made it, the stakes a little higher, made us care a little bit more, and we actually know their names when we watch the movie, at least. so.
Yeah, I think, thinking about all the other movies too, the thing that stuck out to me, I'll disagree with you slightly in that I felt that the first three do a good job establishing actual character dynamics fairly well. Not saying they're all well-written characters or anything, but I get these people pretty fast, but also I'm going to give them all like just a nugget to where you can kind of latch on and see like what's their motivation.
And you've seen them more recently.
Yeah. So 4 and 5, though, they don't care. They literally are just like, this is fodder.
I think 4 is definitively the worst.
Oh, yeah. Easily. Yeah. And 5 is definitely an improvement, and then I think the kills are just way more clever, but I also don't think I don't care about any of those characters at any point in the movie at all. So
the button to that one is really what makes that one.
That's the only reason to watch the movie from a story perspective, at least. Yeah. Christopher Shultz, what did you think of Bloodlines?
I had a really great time with it. I thought it was a really solid entry into this franchise. I think that they're doing some interesting stuff with the sort of basic premise of these movies, which I think we'll get into a little bit more. But yeah, I was really impressed with what they were doing with these movies. With the basic premise and kind of switching it up a little bit. And yeah, the kills are really great. Some of the best I've seen in this franchise, probably. And I really loved the opening sequence. It was very tense as well. It's the kind of thing where maybe you don't realize you have a fear of heights until you watch something like that, and then you're like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm not ever going to go up to a restaurant like that in my life.
And this guy across to me,
who would do that? Who would do such a thing? That would be so crazy for someone to immediately go up into a building exactly like that.
I had so much anxiety when you sent me the text of the Space Needle in Seattle.
Yeah.
So
because he did a little trip there.
Yeah. So I had to do a trip there for work, also visiting family. So I took an extra day. So my wife and I, and it wasn't by design. We're just like, oh, I've got to watch this movie. We got to see it in Seattle. I actually didn't realize that one of the the state's biggest IMAX is literally right next to the Space Needle.
Oh,
so
wow.
until I Google it, and I'm like, oh, I just want to go to the biggest screen I can get. And then I look, and then on the imagery with the IMAX is the Space Needle. And I was like, wait, so I can see Final Destination Bloodlines directly next to the Space Needle. And I told my wife this. My wife, who, by the way, is afraid of heights, she's like, we got to go up it. And I was like, I want to do that, but do you want to do that? So we are both pre-committed. We're going to watch the movie in the IMAX and then go up into the Space Needle. Right. And it was pretty nerve-wracking.
I was going to say.
Even for me, it was a fun time, but ladies and gentlemen, I was constantly looking at the floor. The good news is the floor is not glass in the same way it is in this one. And there are
I
no
was like, the design of this it looks amazing, but it definitely seems like there's
the design. I'll put this way: the architects of the film, which is technically the Skyview restaurant,
because you drop one heavy thing.
Yeah. Oh no, and already the giant screws. I can say those guys. It's a good thing they demolished that thing because that was not remotely as thought through as the actual Space Needle is. But anyway, it was a lot of fun, and I've never been so afraid to go into a high building in my life because I'm not afraid of heights. But after you just watch hundreds of people just die brutally, you start thinking things on your way up.
It would have been very devastating for me, and I would definitely think that I was next, as we alluded to it earlier in the episode.
You are next, Laron. I told
I'm like, yikes. Well,
there are no coincidences.
The chain reaction.
That's design.
Absolutely. I also will say we watched it. It was the Pacific Science Center IMAX in Seattle. So if you're in Seattle, definitely check it out. It's an old school IMAX too, and I was a little worried that the quality might have taken a hit because it's an older school one, just not a lot of seating, and it's lower, like just straight up stadium, like a few really really steep stadium seating. But the picture quality was amazing. I had an incredible audience. Did you guys have a fun audience to watch this with, who were kind of like leaning into it?
It wasn't robust, but they were loud. Because I saw an early matinee of this on Saturday, I think. When did you see the film? Because I saw it the same day.
Sunday. I saw it Sunday.
Okay, so Sunday matinee in the like early afternoon. So there were maybe 50, 60 people in the IMAX theater, but they were all locked in.
Yeah,
you could tell they knew this story, they knew where this was going, and they were there to
That's
see
the kind of audience you want, though.
Yeah.
Cam, how about you?
I saw it at Flick's Brewhouse on Monday night, so I was like, okay, I have to watch this movie. But it was a quieter crowd, but obviously when those kills hit, you just hear like, oh my, like under people's breath, people trying to eat their pizza and drink their beer while consuming, trying to watch the film. So it was fun. I think once it gets gnarlier and gnarlier, people were reacting, but it wasn't anything crazy.
Yeah. Chris?
Yeah, it was me and like two other couples that were not together. They were on their own in separate.
So spread out.
I see.
Yeah, so it wasn't a huge crowd, but kind of like Cam said, I mean, I could tell it was affecting everyone.
Yeah. People flinching, and you could feel that.
Yeah, they were into it for sure. So
do we have these guys sitting directly behind us? And it's like, I guess they hadn't seen the trailer. I'm always, it's fun, but I'm always like, wait, you didn't? They acted like they didn't know that the thing wasn't gonna, like the main inciting death event was gonna be in the Space Needle, because like, oh, it's the Space Needle. Oh, that's so funny. And I was like, that is funny. You're right. But also, did you not know that going into this? Anyway, but it was great. That was very active and appropriately. They weren't chatting, during, it was, and then I won't spoil yet exactly what the needle drop is at the end, but when it cuts to the credits, all-timer, end movie, cut to credits, and then everyone in the theater just started laughing. So it was a really awesome film going experience. There's just, I know I didn't mention this. There's something really interesting about this whole premise that, you cheated death and death's coming back for revenge, that I find to be somewhat immortal. I feel like I was saying earlier, you could apply it to all sorts of different scenarios. I mean, what do you think? And I'll throw it to you, Chris. Like, what do you think it is about this franchise and this sort of premise and idea that seems so like enticing or full of creative potential?
Well, it's just so simple, this is, and I don't mean that in a bad way. It's just, we have death is basically a killer. Death is a serial killer, if you will. And death is going to figure out these ways of making it an accident that you die. But in fact, this is death's design. And yeah, just like you said, there's so many different ways that you can make someone creatively kick the bucket. Again, unless it's the fourth one, you're getting kind of lazy. They're kind of phoning it in on that one.
Yeah.
Because the kills just aren't even all that memorable in the fourth one.
Yeah.
The racetrack was just a really, I mean, the Fast 9 racetrack.
Wasn't that one in 3D or something?
Yeah. And in the 3D's aged real bad.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, I love the premise of this film, or these films. And yeah, again, it just there's so many different ways you can take it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Cam, how about you? Anything that stick out to you about like the premise of these films that kind of you're like, ooh, cool ideas, more potential?
No, I think it's just the sense of humor that they have. I think that's the funnest part as an audience member. It's like the camera, death is looking at you and winking at you like, I'm going to set this up for these people. And that is, the premise is great. Anybody could execute this kind of whole death design, but the way that these films do it in like tongue-in-cheek, kind of like visual puns and with the music that they use, like, the Johnny Cash song.
I was like, oh man.
It's not subtle, but it's funny, and it's like death has a sick sense of humor and you're along for the ride. So that's what makes it really fun.
Oh, I love the way you put that.
Yeah.
Death has a sense of humor. Raindrops are falling on my head.
There's
That was great.
someone
So great.
walking behind
Oh,
you.
that kid, man. I was like,
Oh.
please do not.
Yeah.
That kid.
You knew he was going to die.
I was
somehow.
like, please let that little shit go. I was like, sorry.
It was the worst.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Well, Laron, bring us home on that. Anything you want to add about like why this film franchise and ideas sort of endured?
Yeah, I echo what everyone said. I think, yes, the simplicity of it is makes it malleable to a lot of different things. And also, yes, the dark sense of humor, makes it fun. But also, I think it's just how the things that are happening are grounded in a heightened sense of reality, but things that are like everyday appliances and sharp objects and that buzzing behind you, is that a car? Is that like you just don't know what it could be. And I think that there's a lot of anxiety around the idea that it could be anything. It's not a masked killer that that is stalking you. It is every space you step into like another elaborate death trap. And so I think that that could give you a little bit of a pause, in everyday life. I do always go around. I'm like, what horrific way would I die in my kitchen? Like while making my shrimp scampi.
I mean, after you've seen so many the death in the kitchen in the first movie, you're like, yeah, wild as anything could happen.
Yeah, literally anything. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think the only thing I'd add, and I think Cam actually said it pretty well already, is the creativity and the sense of humor. Like these movies what makes them fun is it's a roller coaster, and that you're not sure where you're going to go. But there's also like the best roller coasters, there's actually moments of suspense where you're like, am I going left or I'm going right? Oh, actually, you're going down. Where you're not the movie's throwing so many things at you, you're not sure where to put your attention. So it's like, how is death actually going to get this person? And oftentimes, the way they come up with is so much more interesting and clever than what you initially thought it was going to be, which is just it's a fun relationship they have with the audience, know. And I think this film in particular really, really leans into that. They say, we see you, audience, we know you, audience. We're gonna do this. No, we're not gonna do that. Could we do this? No, we're not gonna do that. And then there's this thing you didn't even see coming. Wasn't even on your bingo card. And that's what's gonna
Your deaf
really
bingo card.
Right?
Oh my gosh, you do need bingo cards for any screen.
Yes. Yes. That'd be a fun way a marketing ploy. Bring in there like, which way is this character going to die? And they give you like an assortment of different options.
Oh, and speaking of the marketing for this movie, A+. Did you guys see they had the trucks driving around with the logs on it? So again, the listeners, if you're not in the know, and even if you haven't seen the movie, I've talked to people who have not even seen Final Destination 2, but they know that the giant truck full of the logs is like,
seems to be the most that whole highway chase.
Yeah.
The whole highway chase death scene is kind of like the seminal piece that I think that everyone references with this franchise.
Yeah.
And I always mention that one as like, very few movies have changed my everyday behavior moving forward after watching things. And that's from every twisted, disgusting horror movie I've ever watched. But that is a movie where like every time I am behind a trucker with any kind of cargo, especially logs, I'm like, nope.
Yeah,
and you get over because I'm immediately playing the horrible way that log is going to come and decapitate me. So,
I think until this movie, I think that was the best inciting death sequence by a pretty. I mean, the roller coaster was fun, but the way the highway season, like the wreck is structured, the way you have a pretty good sense of placement of who all the players on the board are, and the way it just just escalates
Yeah.
and then delivers more surprises is so powerful. I do think though, this film, Bloodlines, that opening,
It's pretty killer.
It's pretty killer. I mean, it really sets the stage for the movie, and it comes out. It's an amazing sequence. You're like, how are they going to top that? And they really didn't pull any punches. I don't think. So I'm curious, like, what do you think about the way the Bloodline shakes up the formula? We've talked about like what's sort of like cool or enduring about the formula. How does this family tie thing really shake things up, Laron?
I think it grounds it. I think and as I mentioned, it also gives it a more personal touch where they're not random people that we don't care about. They're this interconnected family that has flaws and some history and some backstory, but there's still this connection that they all have. And so we're just that much more invested in what happens to them individually because of how it's going to affect the group and the group dynamic in many ways. And so I found that to be a nice touch, and surprising that it took this long to do it, but still made this feel fresh and new in a certain way. They kind of remix the premise a little bit, add some more lore and different elements to it that I think make it feel like, oh, there's actually more to mine here than what the other entries would suggest. Because I think every entry post 1, with the exception of the button on 5, is really a carbon copy of the premise. And then
Exactly.
New people, new kills,
Yep.
new people, new kills, but nothing interesting or new beyond that. And this is the first one to do that. So I feel like this is how you expand upon a franchise and make it more, make it feel novel again, so.
Yeah. Cam, what's your take on that? What is this one doing differently that we haven't seen before?
Yeah, I thought the same thing. I feel like we were talking about elevated horror, and I was thinking more like the family whole theme of like having a family feels like a lot of recent horror films about family curses, about like, you think Hereditary, you think The Monkey, Ready or Not, like you think of those family curses that are prevalent, and it's like kind of building that. It's like I'm not saying it's easy, but it's an easy way to kind of build the drama around the kills that are happening because there is such a tie there. And I guess we'll get more into the themes that they attempt to explore within that whole idea of like a family curse or generational trauma and all of that. So I thought that was really interesting that they decided to go that route. And I was definitely more invested because I thought the cousins were really cool. Like the way that they built those relationships was really well done.
Yeah, and for such a silly premise, it did bring. Well, I mean, we'll talk about more in spoilers. How deep does it go? Well, that's the discussion. But the fact that it brought anything, like any
beyond surface
substantive
level
ideas beyond surface level, people getting killed, the way they integrated it, I think is pretty impressive overall. Chris, what did you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think just echoing what has already been said. I thought the premise was really a unique way of taking this franchise into unexpected territory. Because you're right, every single one of them is someone has a premonition. They stop at least their friends from being affected, but the disaster usually does still take place. And then one by one, they all die. That's the basic premise of the franchise. While death, resets the timeline or whatever. So yeah, I was really surprised to see something actually new come out of this.
Yeah. I'm reminded of when the Saw franchise took a long break the first time. It's done this a couple times, but the first time we were getting 1 a year, 1 through 7, and then they take like 6 or 7 years off, and we come back with Jigsaw. And I remember the time being like, all right, you guys took a break, you took a step back, got some good idea, said, hey, what are some new ideas? What's a new direction to take the franchise in? And turns out they didn't have one. And it was really upsetting. In fact, I would even say Spiral, while not far from perfect, at least that one had ideas about a new direction.
And Sam Jackson.
Well, and Sam Jackson, and even Chris Rock, Yeah. But it had things going for it. So when you see a franchise come back from being away from so long, you hope this is really the best case scenario. hey, we watched the other ones. We know what they're about. We know what people like about them. How can we put a fresh spin on them? And I think this movie is also very rewarding for fans in that it does kind of reframe the entire series in a way that was completely unexpected to me. We know we'll get into it in spoilers, but the Tony Todd character, we actually get some backstory with him that somehow makes his appearance in every one of the movies and how he seems to know more than everyone else makes sense, which I was not expecting.
Right. You mentioned Saul. Honestly, just because I thought about it in the way that like how the distance between like Scream 3 and Scream 4, where it's like a lot had happened. We've done like, torture porn, all this kind of stuff. There's a lot more things that happened in horror that they could comment on, and they kind of came back in there. That one wasn't a slam dunk in terms of box office sales or interest, but weirdly the fifth and sixth one, but even more so. And I think it's because they did take that time and find a new direction to go into. We'll see if that lands strong with the newest one coming out soon. But I feel like more so than that, this feels like when Scream 5 or Scream,
Five Cream.
Yeah, exactly. Came out. It feels more like that, like where it's like, okay, they've mined this territory. There's new faces. There's new backstory. There's new things to care about beyond a retread of what we've seen before. So,
yeah. Again, very excited. We'll talk more about where they could take it in the spoilers. I kind of might have glossed over this. Was there anything in particular that you like especially liked or did not like about the film before we move into letter grade recommendations? I'll throw it to you, Laron.
There was a slight over-reliance on CGI-oriented stuff that I would have preferred to have been more practical. It's not overly distracting. Like I said, the opening scene is very well edited, but there were a couple of sequences where you can kind of tell the blood is not, you know what I'm saying? And I mean, if the death itself wasn't so creatively executed, you might not even have, but it might not even have bothered you, so, but yeah, I would say that's my only.
So it's like CGI blood and just lower production values.
That would probably be my only gripe, yeah.
Cam?
Honestly, I think the lead character felt like towards the middle halfway, she felt kind of pushed to the side because the other characters were so interesting to me.
She was definitely the least interesting.
Right. Like I really liked Eric, like the goth, like tattoo cousin. And fun fact about him, he played the vampire boy in Trick or Treat on the bus.
Oh, very cool.
The bus story with the kid.
Yeah.
So he's the kid in the vampire mask. So I just thought I would throw that out there.
That is a fun fact.
And also just Twitter's ablaze about him. I guess they think he's really good looking or whatever. But anyway, besides that, I just thought everyone else started to get a little more interesting than the lead. And that was my only problem with that. I was like, we're supposed to be following the one person that can see the signs. Like they're supposed to be intriguing us. But now everyone's kind of taking the spotlight from her. So I thought the writing for her got a little weak towards the end.
Yeah. No, I think that's fair. Chris?
Yeah, I concur with that. She definitely took kind of a back seat to the other characters as the film went along, which, they could have used some beefing up, I think. And there was some stuff that didn't quite get resolved with her too, like her family, with her relationship with her brother and all that. That kind of got touched upon, but it never really
got resolved. Yeah,
it got fully.
Also,
resolved.
I thought I'll be honest. I think there's a lot to be left desired with her mom, the character. Like there's a lot there, and I think they're trying to shorthand it, but I kept thinking, so what's the there? And they sort of allude to things,
but
they're strange. Why? Well, and it's implied that her mom bought into the whole but we never really got any sort of
it's missing like one pertinent conversation to clear up some things.
Maybe a flashback of the mom freaking out, or I don't know.
I think one conversation or something.
A sit down conversation. Right. Just
that was probably. I think that like the actual your lead character and ironically like the kind of like core family of the film. I felt the dad seemed like I was also like there's something here where I think this guy's got a point of view that he's here to be sort of like the the skeptic, and I liked that. But then he just sort of fades out into the background by Act 3. It doesn't ruin the movie, by the way, because we're not going to these movies.
That's
for
not why
me.
we're going to it, but would have made it stronger.
It would have made it stronger, especially with family being such an important component of the film. The fact that there's a certain irony that entire core group, by the time you get to Act 3 and they're sort of up against the corner, you're kind of like, yeah, but I kind of don't care what happens to them that much. But anyway, letter grade. Cam Rojas, what letter grade would you give the film?
I'm on the spot. I would say like a B+. Like I was kind of up there with it. I had a really good time, even with the little things that we mentioned with the storyline. But I was engaged the whole time. Like I did not have a moment where I was like, okay, this is getting really boring, or I'm not engaged. I thought I had a great time. So
very nice, Christopher Shultz.
I'd go ahead and give it an A. I think. Again, it's a really solid entry into the franchise. It brings a lot of new stuff to the table that I wasn't expecting. And it's just like you said, Cam, it is not boring at all. It is very, it is very engaging. So.
Very nice. Laron Chapman?
I'd also give this a B+. I felt like this is probably, arguably the best from a storytelling
I think
standpoint.
It's the best one.
It's probably, you just watched them. So, there's, I have nostalgic attachments to the first 3, but I do feel like
they're pretty bad.
I was going to say,
they're fun and they're
right.
aware, but this one is definitely doing that. There's some sophistication that we have here.
Right. There's just a little bit more craft involved here. Yeah. Especially in a little bit more, again, someone sat down and actually looked at us and said, hey, how can we develop these characters in some degree and figure out, there was something there where it doesn't feel like we're just going through the motions before watching someone else die. There's story here between the deaths, and where I don't think there was a whole lot of that before.
There are what I would like to call a lot of cherries on top in this movie, like just moments. And in fact, the opening sequence, there was at least 3 times I was like, chef's kiss. Yeah. They did like 3 of those in one sequence where you're like, they didn't have to put that there. But they did, and it just made me it showed that these people really know what they're doing. The very Rube Goldberg machine-esque deaths in a couple of these where, you get the death, and then there's also another like little thing where you're like, you didn't have to do that, but that just made this so much more memorable. So I think it does all of that really well, and in terms of talking about the sophistication of the deaths and the way that they all kind of go out. I'm gonna give it a B overall. I'm teetering on a B+. I'm just hesitant because I really had. I will say the experience was like an A+. Again, seeing it with that group and that theater, then doing the Space Needle immediately afterwards. A++. Can't wait to tell my grandkids about it one day because I'm sure they'll know what this movie is. But at the same time, if I'm being honest, the movie has some weaknesses, even though I still think it's an overall home run in terms of just revitalizing a franchise with a fresh spin. What are some other recommendations we would give listeners who are interested in the ideas of Final Destination Bloodlines? I'll throw it to you, Chris.
Well, obviously, watch the other Final Destination movies. If you've never seen one, if Bloodlines is your first, definitely go back and watch the other ones. And then I would think that in terms of films that has that kind of Rube Goldberg or like freak accident kind of thing to the comedic effect, I would say Tucker and Dale versus Evil.
Oh, yeah.
Very, very funny movie. And it's sort of spoilery to say, but everyone who dies in it kind of unwittingly kills themselves. So in terms of seeing deaths like that on screen, I think that's a good one.
All right, great recommends. Laron Chapman?
I went way more sophisticated with this, I feel like. But I was thinking of It Follows, because, the idea that their choices, there's a ripple effect for each choice they make, and that it doesn't necessarily go away. It just goes away for a while until it comes back to you, And so this idea that that this encroaching threat of death is always, looming, and you never know in the chain of command, like where you fit into that space, and so you're never really off the hook. And I feel like these movies play with that a lot. Just when they think that they've solved the problem or rectified it for good, not quite. Death always has a little trick up its sleeve because it's always a few steps ahead of us. So It Follows comes to mind, and we're getting a sequel to that pretty soon, which I'm very curious about.
Very curious
with
about.
Minka Monroe and the same director. So
They follow.
They Follow.
Mhm.
All right, Cam, what are some other things you recommend?
So I went down the route of like just cursed people, cursed families. So like I mentioned, the monkey kind of came to mind just because of a family curse and the creative deaths. If you're kind of into seeing stuff like that, then go in there. And then I threw in the Fear Street trilogy from Netflix.
Also getting a fourth one of those.
Yeah, and getting the
Prom Night.
prom queen one. So if you like seeing kind of also creative deaths, because I have very memorable deaths from that trilogy as well, especially the first two.
Yeah.
I thought had kind of similar setup of like the goriness and like how it kind of sometimes gets kind of comedic in that sense, and a lot of needle drops as well.
Yeah, I think that's a great pick. Those are fun. Those movies are super fun. There's the fun levels are pretty comparable, I would think.
Yeah.
Well, just earlier this year, The Monkey came out. I think that movie is a different flavor of humor. I do think it is a fun movie about death that sort of is trying to like laugh at the idea. If you're looking for the comedy angle, I think if you're looking for movies about familial trauma, there's several out there, but I wanted to give a shout out to The Iron Claw because I think in terms of like family curses that pass down and how it like can really...
Oh, you did deep cut.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah. I was
like,
going to
oh.
say.
Yeah. No, it's a lot more serious. It's not really fun. Actually, it's the opposite of fun, I would argue. But very good movie about sort of exploring the family trauma and air quotes curses, and then just for the last one, super fun, not horror, but death is really funny in it. Edge of Tomorrow, Live Die Repeat.
Yeah.
I mean, how many ways can you kill Tom Cruise in one movie? Turns out a lot, and all the time it's pretty funny. All right, well, that is our spoiler-free review of Final Destination Bloodlines. If you do not want to be spoiled on the film, go ahead and tune out now.
Humans. They are not the cowering wretches we were promised. They stand. They are unruly and therefore cannot be ruled. To challenge them is to court death.
So, Final Destination Bloodlines, I think, explores the idea of traumatic events haunting a family across multiple generations. While it might not be especially deep, there are some bigger ideas at play here. I just want to kick things off by asking you, what is your favorite death sequence in this film and why? And Cam, I'll throw it to you first.
Going back to the tattoo, the Eric guy, definitely got his butt kicked a lot by death. So that MRI scene with him and his brother, and then it's also very clever where you don't even know what's going to happen. Like, is he going to get the EpiPen in time? And then it plays back into his piercings from the tattoo parlor.
All of them.
All of them. So you get to see all of them getting yanked by the MRI machine, and
you see why the skull is on the poster of the movie.
Yeah, getting yanked by his piercing. So that's the most memorable one, and that was one I was actually talking to people about today, people who have seen the movie, and they were like, that was one of my favorites. I'm like, yeah, so it's cool to have like those like workplace, coffee place talks, especially about movies like this,
Yeah, those guys were so stupid. You're like, obviously, you're gonna die somehow. What's it gonna be? And then the spring shooting out of the vending machine.
Yeah,
that was one of the chef's kiss. You're like,
that's the
I didn't
spiral
see that coming.
The spiral, and like it was like he's gonna get killed by peanut butter one way or another,
right?
And it was kind of through the way of that,
Oh my gosh, incredible. Laron, Chapman, what was your favorite death sequence here?
So we mentioned the great opening, which I think honestly is my favorite. I feel like that was the height of it for me. But Cam took my second favorite choice. But so as to not repeat one, the one that I also just found myself cackling at was the dumpster with I can't remember was this the sister or cousin?
The girl cousin.
Girl cousin or something just like that whole dance around like who you think it's going to be, and then it's not that person, and then just
but better than the death is the reveal.
Yes,
that
yes.
oh my gosh, she was next because you're not actually my child.
Oh my
Which brings up
goodness.
this awkward family moment where we need to sit down and talk about our.
Wait, who was it? I can't remember what the guy's name was, but who was it? It was Mr. Walker. Is that why he always wanted to play cash?
Yes, exactly.
So
Hilarious.
funny.
Yeah.
Hilarious. But I think just seeing her body throng about into the trash can and then into it just, I shouldn't be laughing, but I know that that was intended to be humorous. So if not, everyone was definitely laughing. So
Yeah.
that's probably my second favorite moment.
Oh, man. Oh, both great picks. Chris, what was your favorite death scene?
Well, the MRI was my favorite for sure. I like just to add on to that one. I like that the reveal of it is death can be vengeful.
Right.
Death isn't going to just stick to the list.
Right.
You've been fucking with death's timeline at this or design at this point. So now it's like, well, now I'm going to take an extra one just to be
Fuck around and find out.
yeah, extra thing. But I found myself very much laughing at the lawnmower death.
Yeah.
That one was particularly good, the way it was set up. And again, it had a lot that suspense that you were talking about. It's like there's the rake under the trampoline, and you think maybe that's going to.
But then she stops, and you're like, "Oh man, well now."
Yeah.
Oh, and then now it's going to tear, and they're going to die somehow. Oh no, that's not it. That's not it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Or someone's going to swallow the glass shard.
Right.
You
Yeah.
know?
Yep.
Yeah.
So much fun.
Mhm.
They love playing with the expectations. I mean, you guys have said the best ones already. I do think, the opening sequence I just think is an all timer. Like I might at some point just turn that on just to watch it because it's so funny. Like and again that multiple of the chef's kiss moments. It's like the raindrops fall on your head. Oh, so funny. And then the kid getting splattered.
Yeah.
Amazing. And then the penny ending back in the fountain.
Oh,
You're just
that
like,
old lady.
I was
God
like,
damn
come
it.
on, man.
It's like they were so close. She had to pick it up, and then she's in close. I just love too the coincidental. Like, come on, she's right there in the vicinity of them, about using that same penny from that moment. It's just, I know. It's great. It's great.
Well, and that
the absurdity of it.
But that leads me to I guess a notable honorable mention is it really is the last death sequence because and it still fits the formula. You know that the survivors are not actually going to survive. In fact, having watched them all, there's only one movie where the survivors actually survive, and it's the second one. And we still don't even know. They allude to it in this film. Like, we don't know what happened there. But you're like, they're going to die. And it's just how. And the fact that it's not the train that kills them. It's the frickin' logs. To call back to the second movie, the logs that fling out from behind the cargo that kills them. Oh, on the kid's prom day, no less. Just cruel.
Right.
It was good stuff. What do you guys? Well, I guess I'll throw this out there because I forgot to ask about it in the spoiler-free section. Tony Todd's final appearance. We've got to talk about that. And I thought this was interesting for a couple of reasons. Number one, they recontextualized his character because he was a kid who was in the Sky Tower. The day it died, his mom was working, and he was just happened to be there and was one of the survivors.
Yeah.
And he'd been interacting with their the family's sort of like matriarch who sort of put all of this into motion.
Yeah.
So he had this insider knowledge that death is out for vengeance, sort of thing, and that's how he's been able to sort of like help guide or misguide in some cases the people in the other films because he kind of sort of knows what's going on.
Yeah.
And I thought his sign off here was particularly touching, where he basically says something to the effect of, death's going to come for all of us one way or another. The best thing you can do is enjoy every minute of life you have because life's a gift. Seemed really, really touching. Laron, what was your take on the scene?
I was really pleased that he wasn't just some thankless cameo in here with like a couple of lines. I will say that the scene was shorter than I thought it was going to be. I thought we were probably going to see him a few times in this, but I do think that there was a lot of weight to the words that he used. And you cleared it up for me in the opening here about whether or not he knew or the production knew or what have you about, his fate ultimately. And if that was then retroactively baked into it, but it's actually more poignant to know that they let him say the words and actually improvise, and it wasn't the filmmakers like, emotionally manipulating the situation to be poignant because he's dying, like, and so and then to eulogize him, or in memorial of him, in memory of him, um, giving us obviously the iconic, Candyman character, which I think is still so underrated. That first one, it's so good, and it's so relevant now with the whole gentrification and race relations and poverty. Anyway, so it's all there. But I love that he's been connected to this franchise for so long, and I love that they gave him a send off that's a tribute to him in a really substantive way that you wouldn't think from a movie like this. So.
Yeah, Cam, what was your read on the his final scene?
Oh, yeah, the same way. I mean, it was just the way he waited for her to be able to pack his things up and leave. He was like, I'm going to do this last little message to these people, but I'm done. I'm clocking out. Death can come and get me now. But yeah, it seemed very poignant and a good send off for a horror movie icon, Yeah. And I loved how they tied it back to why he was there. Why was he so involved,
Because we'd always assumed from the other films that he was just like the wise old man.
I thought he was. I honestly interpreted him as like he's the harbinger. It was always kind of. I mean, I know he's sort of giving them like warning advice, but it's like he shows up and it's a
weird things
bad
happen.
sign. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So for them, they're like, his appearance was poignant and sweet, but for them to actually provide that character backstory that is short, sweet, but makes an impact and somehow makes it make sense was very surprising.
But now the question is, has he also been avoiding death all these years as well in his own clever bubble? You know what I mean? Like, so.
Well, the tree never got to him.
That's right.
See, he would.
That's true.
It was funny. Not funny. It's kind of bleak. But my wife was watching, and she says, "Well, what about him? He's next." And then literally after the credit,
that's right.
Literally, like the words came out of her mouth, and it said "in memoriam" on the screen. I was like, "In loving memory." I was like, "Yeah, I think there's your answer." But even the character, it seemed ready for death in a lot of ways. Chris, what was your? What would you think of this final Tony Todd tribute sequence?
Like everyone, I just thought it was really touching and poignant. I really thought it was an interesting way to sort of bring some closure to this particular character. Not just Tony Todd sort of as himself saying goodbye, but this character saying goodbye to the franchise as well. Obviously, we won't get him in future unless there's like a son of Bloodworth out there that they reveal. But yeah, so just having this character actually get some backstory, as you said, was particularly interesting. It wasn't just the usual appearance of him too.
Mm-hmm. This is definitely the most substantive appearance that he's had in all the movies.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Well, let's dig in as far as we can take it. Do you guys think this film is actually saying anything especially meaningful about things around, familial trauma, or is it just sort of a gimmick?
I think it's loosely there. They're definitely not engaging with it in a deeper way beyond just the fun carnival ride aspect of it. But I think there's definitely a read about generational trauma and how things get passed down and how certain things keep happening to you, or you're aware of these things, but you don't know the origin of them, like, why am I, like, oh, Mom, if you had told me that you went through this, then it would make sense why I've been carrying this invisible burden of something that I didn't have any context for, so, they're definitely like, that's there, you know what I mean, if you want to dig into it, but I don't think that's why people go to these movies, but I think that, but it is nice that there's an element of that here, yeah.
Mm. Give us enough weight for you to take it more, just a hint more seriously.
If you want it to.
If you want to, yeah.
Yeah.
Cam, what's your take here?
Yeah, same here. I think they did try to explore like the kids of Iris, one of them choosing to raise a happy family and not think about his mom and the way she affected him. And then the other mom decides to run away, so just people's different ways of dealing with trauma instead of just growing and learning from it or keeping that burden. So, I mean, I think they tried to touch upon it, but like Laron was saying, it's there. We're not there to see that, but it was something that I thought was different, and I was there for it, but they didn't really expand upon it.
And the way they deal with their grandmother, like, and the fact that they think they're shielding their family, like, we're protecting you by not telling you.
Yeah.
Like, that's something you can see in families too. Oh, grandma's just crazy, and that's just the narrative, but really grandma has all the answers, and we should have been listening to her all along. And if we had, maybe we'd be better equipped for the things that are happening now. And so this idea of like how, communication and the breakdown of communication in families, how necessary that is and how useful it can be. And how, that we shouldn't be dismissive of other people's experiences because we might not know all the answers.
Yeah. I mean, I think you both said it pretty well in terms of the, I think the idea that is there, that could be applied, there's something to think about is, you can't, like, familial trauma, there is, even when you try to run from it or hide from it or whatever, it is almost inherently in your blood because of the psychological impacts it had on your parents or their parents. And that has, in one way or another, shaped you because of their response, I think, Cam, as you said there. So I do kind of like that idea a little bit, that sometimes you don't understand why things are the way they are in your family, but you're affected by it. And, I think that's,
Yeah.
a germ of an idea.
It also gives them a foundation through which to, if they want to go further with that and make these movies a little bit more serious. I hope they don't take all the fun out of it.
No.
But if they wanted
not.
to explore that theme a little bit, expand upon it a little more, they could. Yeah.
Chris, bring us home here. Anything you want to say about the familial trauma idea?
No, I think everyone's covered it pretty well. It's a unique take on what we've seen before, and I hope that they continue to be creative in the franchise going forward with it. I hope that they come up with more ideas like what we've seen in here, because this gives it a whole new element that we haven't seen before. And if we do have another one in the future, if it just kind of goes back and rehashes the same old formula before, that'll definitely be a letdown.
Yeah, I mean, I think that leads me to the closing point I want to make here. I mean, this is really, as we've all said several times, this is a fresh spin on the franchise. Where do we want? Where should they take this next? Like, or at the very least, what sort of creative lessons do we hope the executives are taking? Often executives take the wrong lessons from the thing, but what do we hope they're taking away from this for the future? Because make no mistake, this thing is a critical box office hit.
Yeah.
There's going to be at least 3 more of these.
Right.
I would be shocked if there's not at least 2 more. So, like, what do we hope they do with this franchise next? Because I think, Krista, what you said, and Laron, you've alluded to this too. How can you contextualize this premise? This even be one of those movies where I know we joke about take it to space, and I'm not saying I want that next, but you could literally apply the same principle to a space horror, and it would be fun, like.
Yeah, I've often teased the idea of a medieval version of it.
Yes.
I just think that would be fun. Like,
Right?
you go back to the 1800s, I don't know, whenever there's sharp, and then all of a sudden weird horrific things are happening with even more sharper I could just see that, like that could, and it doesn't even have to be connected to anything here. It could just be like, but I mean, you could go backwards, because everything kind of started in the, was the original in the 90s, or I know it was 2000s, but was it set in present day, or I can't remember.
I believe it was.
Okay,
Yeah.
so then it would be early 2000s, but you could go before that. You could see, like, did this happen before these people?
Well, as we see in this movie,
It goes all the way to
as
70s,
the
right?
the penny rolls around the credits. There's an awful lot of people who have died in some ways. Some of them we have seen, some of them we haven't. So
Right. Yeah, just kind of going back into the box of
make it a
options.
mafia movie, but with Final Destination. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of fun things you could do. I heard one, like, the directors were interviewed, I think it was for Letterboxd, and they're like, we've heard all the theories and we think they're all amazing, and if the studio will let us do half of them, we will try. And one of them that someone came up with was that you mentioned space. NASA's involved in some way. There's a meteor coming to hit the globe,
the planet.
the
Oh my
planet,
gosh.
and then they interject it so the entire planet is
Oh,
now been
no.
avoided death. So it's just
And
chaos.
turns out Armageddon is in the Final Destination universe.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, man.
I mean, it just that sounds stupid, but the same idea. It's like, but it could work. I don't know what you would do with that. Like everyone's on death's design. We just don't know what the order is now. Where was it going to hit? Who was it going to
It
hit?
turns out Don't Look Up was actually all just the premonition, you know?
Yeah. If only. No.
Cam, what do you think? What do you hope we see with this franchise next?
I mean, obviously, like Chris was saying, like, don't rehash. Let's not go back to the same old formula. Let's not make it like dumb college or high school kids that are like, we don't know what's going on. Maybe more callbacks to some characters if they wanted to try to make some more connections, like go to the 80s and like it's someone's mom or somebody, I don't know, like maybe something along the lines, but the medieval one sounds fun, like an idea of like there's a witch that's cursing us
some
all.
kind of curse and it's just death.
It's just death, yeah. But no, I mean, hopefully they just don't go back to be generic.
Yeah. I also like the idea of like a multiple opening sort of thing happening, like where one tragic thing happens, and then another setup for another tragic thing happens. So simultaneously, like in different spaces, and then have those things converge in a different way. That would be interesting.
Okay, I guess. Okay, one thing I do. So, like, I was doing research on this, and Final Destination was a spec script for X-Files.
Yeah.
If you guys knew about that.
I did not know that. That's cool.
So, Mulder or David Duchovny's character was talking about, like, why people have the premonitions, because it's basically his brother who's dealing with the situation of Final Destination. And I would like them to expand more as to why people have premonitions. If it is a bloodline, then it's a bloodline of psychics. That maybe that's in the bloodline and that's why people are getting the chance to know how to beat death. Or is it that death is just a sicko and wants to give them hope? And then, he's like, here's some hope. Never mind, you're still going to die. But I think it'd be cool if they brought it back to like, maybe there's a different force that's trying to help. And even then, death is still making it out somehow. But I just thought maybe they would do that in this film. Like the bloodline is there are psychics or there are people with abilities.
Because the original felt very, very supernatural.
Yeah.
In that way. And then I feel like it's felt less supernatural as the movie's
I don't want them, I don't want them to over-explain things. I do think they have in no way ever referenced why people have premonitions. And I don't necessarily want a whole movie about that. But, if they were to somehow, in the same way Bloodline kind of recontextualizes some things about, Tony Todd's character, is there a way they could incorporate that into the larger story about why? So what is it? Why is these random people having these premonitions?
Like why this grandma?
Yeah.
Why is she the first one to start this chain?
And then if it's a bloodline, then people are related in a way or they have an ability that's being passed on. But again, not get super over-explained.
Or maybe even explain being like, oh, it's just random people. And even if that's the explanation.
Yeah.
Like someone knows we looked into this or we read about I don't care. But like, it is a weird thing where you're like, that's the one variable. You're like, we still have no rationale. It's just kind of random.
Yeah, you randomly selected. But I also, something that I found very amusing, how the grandmother was able to withstand for all these years.
She just stayed in a house.
She stayed in a house. And it's so funny because like, even when they're like, the safest place we can go is where grandma was. And then you go
that was
there.
a terrible idea from the jump.
First of all, how has she lived this long here? Because literally, this is a death trap waiting to happen just for anybody.
Yeah, spikes everywhere.
I was like,
oh man,
I would be on a flat land. The earth would have to divide in half and like make me go into the earth's crust for me to be, feel safe.
Underground bunker.
Exactly.
Honestly, but I guess you could risk cave-ins that way. I don't know.
Yeah. It's gonna get you.
Yeah,
it's gonna get you.
That's why I loved how when the house just immediately starts burning, it was just like immediately a bad idea that they should not have come here.
I could not believe how. That was.
She
hilarious.
takes 3 steps out of the house and she was like, "Let me just show you. Why not? I waited all this time." It's like, okay.
Yeah.
Grandma being selfish. Died to prove a point. All right. Well, anything else you guys want to add about Final Destination Bloodlines?
I don't think so.
No.
We've said it all there is to say. Ladies and gentlemen, what did you think of Final Destination Bloodlines? You can let us know by hitting us up on Facebook.com/The Cinematrop or on Instagram @The Cinematrop. Hey guys, this has been a lot of fun. Cam, Chris, Laron, it's a great time. Cam, where can people keep up with you and your work online?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram, m.camillachaves, Instagram.com, I don't know. And yeah, deadCenter Film Festival is coming up really soon, June 11th through June 15th. So look us up, deadcenterfilm.org, or on Instagram, Facebook, you name it. We're all over the place. Even if you can't get a pass, I'm sure you're going to find a film you want to pay $10 to get online and get a ticket. And it's all going to be great, and you'll see Laron and I there, and Caleb. And, we're all just going to have a really good time. And Chris, everyone's going to be there, so come hang out with us.
That's right. It's like Super Smash Brothers. Everyone is here. Chris Shultz, where can people find you and your work online?
I'm most active on Instagram. That's _Agastus _. Yeah, I don't post a lot, but I'm usually lurking around there.
Yeah. Right in Cinematrop, Flick Attack reviews as well, yeah?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Flick Attack and Cinematrop. Yeah.
Very
Check
cool.
us out.
Awesome. Ron Chapman, where can people find you and your work online?
They can follow our episodes here at cinematropolis.com. They can follow my mini reviews on Letterboxd at black_Cinna_man. Or they can follow my longer form reviews with real insights with Laron Chapman on cinematropolis.com.
Excellent. Catch Laron all the places. You can find me on all the social media channels at C Masters Talk. That's letter C Masters Talk, Letterboxd, Instagram, the works. But most importantly, you can just head over to the cinematropolis.com and see all the stuff we're doing over there. This has been a great time, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us. So we'll be back next week, Laron, if you choose to accept the mission.
Oh, I do.
It is the final reckoning of sorts. It could be.
Yeah, we'll see.
We'll see. Tune in next week when we review the 8th entry in the Mission Impossible franchise, Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning. Not to be confused with Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning Part 2, because that movie doesn't exist. But
they abandoned it mid marketing. You're like,
until next time.